What is going on, FA Nation? Jon Impemba here with James Grande, bringing you the Fantasy Slam NBA DFS live stream. James, it's been a wild day. Something that we sort of predicted, basically on our podcast last night. We had a feeling Kevin Durant was going to sit out. We had a feeling that those Kyrie Irving could be sitting out, and we also think maybe LeBron James could sit out after Anthony Davis sat out last night. Of course, now LeBron listed as questionable to play. So some interesting injury news opening up already a ton of value when, there was already a lot of value on this slate. Blake Griffin was ruled out. Derrick Rose was ruled out. We thought we were going to lean towards the Pistons, and now there's even more value on the net side. Small slate, but where are we going? How are you feeling about everything?
There's rumblings, John. I'm getting word that they're calling you Nostradamus. They're calling us Nostradamus.
I was going to say, we did this a lot last year. We were fantastic with predicting guys sitting out and not playing. So it's great to know we haven't lost our touch already a few games into the season.
So barring our being that's so Raven type of predictions, I mean the slate is it's weird because there's no really indication on where Brooklyn's going to go without Kyrie and Durant. We've seen them soak up so much of the ownership, and yes, it's easy to say Karis LeVert and Joe Harris, but where do they go after that? What's going to happen with the Lakers? I mean, you joked that LeBron's going to be either ruled in or out at 9:40. But that honestly could be the case,
it's probably sadly going to be the case.
I mean, the NBA is only required to give us half an hour of notification, so that could happen. The Vegas odds, and I said it before we hopped on air, suggest that he's going to play because the over under has gone up throughout the day. I don't know if people are betting that LeBron is going to play, but.
Well, I think the over/under maybe not necessarily an indication of whether or not LeBron plays or not.
The spread
the spread is definitely what I would take an indication of there.
Hasn't moved, or it's moved one point since open. So I don't know if it only moving 1 point really suggests LeBron's not playing.
Okay.
But yeah, definitely weird and definitely a lot of value. I don't know if you saw the poll I put up. More people still on Pistons value over Nets value. Do you tend to agree with that? Or
I mean, I guess it depends on what you're labeling as value. I mean, we think Karis LeVert, obviously fantastic value, is going to be a must play tonight. If you're looking at sort of the 4K range, you're going Joe Harris or Delian Wright, or you're going Taurean Prince or Jeremy Grant. Which value are you sort of riding there? I think on DraftKings for sure, Prince at 3,100, you just have to play. There's just no way around that. He has 10x upside, and so far on the slate, there's been a handful of 3K guys, James, not this slate, but this season that have gone for huge numbers. Raul Nato last night went off. George Hill the night before, monster night. So this could be the Taurean Prince 10x day that we're talking about. But I love the value over there that's on Detroit as well. And just now, James, because we're live, we get this breaking news. Jahlil Okafor ruled out. We already liked Mason Plumlee at 6K. His backup center is no longer there now. So even more minutes. Do we see Isaiah Stewart make his debut tonight? There's so much value that's going to be available on both sides. I think the higher upside play, sort of given the matchup, though, is going to be on the net side. I think they can do more against Memphis than I think the Pistons could do against Atlanta.
I am indifferent about that. I guess upside based on price, because like you're talking about, Taurean Prince is 3,100.
Right.
You don't get better upside at a price tag like that. And we're not getting a discount on Jeremy Grant. We're not getting a discount on Mason Plumlee. So from that standpoint, I agree. I do think that they can attack. They being Detroit can attack Atlanta pretty well here, even though they've been dreadful offensively.
They are getting Clint Capella back tonight. I mean, again, he's only limited minutes, but Capella is a little bit of a difference maker, at least at the rim. If Gallinari's out, that takes a bad defender off the floor for them. He's currently a game time decision. They're starting Reddish and Hunter, strong defenders. Bogdan's not a bad defender. So they're getting better defensively, and we could see Rondo debut tonight. So I think there were better defenders in Atlanta than in years past. John Collins is still a Civ, absolute turnstile. So is Trae Young. He's not out there to play D. But I think, they get a little bit tougher with guys like them coming back.
Fair. It's a fair point. We'll see if Capella even gets into the 20s, considering how long he's been absent for. But
Yeah, his own quote was that he plans on playing into the 20s tonight. What exactly does
thanks,
that
Clint.
mean?
Appreciate the breaking news from yourself.
Right, right. What exactly does that mean? We've seen players lie consistently. So, currently, Demboya is also a game time decision. So, it could be very concentrated minutes there with Detroit. So, maybe that plays well for them themselves. That's largely the injury news that we're taking a look at. And like you said, very interesting value tonight. But if we're going to look sort of at the top of the slate, top of the position, looking at point guard, Trae Young has just been unbelievable this year. He's giving me 36 and 37 actual points in both games he's played. He did that in 25 minutes the other night. Really just blowing out teams, 50 fantasy points in both games. He was somebody that I was all over to begin with. You look at his point per game, fantasy point per minute, and his usage rate, it's like Harden level numbers right now. It's 36% usage rate, 1.8 fantasy points per minute. Knowing that guys like Kyrie and Durant and maybe LeBron are all out, where does Trae Young sit for you as the top play of the slate?
I think he's in the top 3 for me. I think obviously Harden is there. It's very hard not to put Anthony Davis there if LeBron is ruled out, and then probably Trae Young. If LeBron plays, I think Trae has a case ahead of Davis in terms of like the rankings.
Yeah, and I think on FanDuel, because the ownership, you play 2 point guards. There's a ton of value on the slate, and we call FanDuel free duel over here because you can literally build the most insane starts and scrub lineups. It doesn't shock me to see our drafted percentages on Trae Young.
Right.
If I'm looking at it correct, again, 5-game slate, so you're going to see a lot of high ownership concentration on these guys. But just to give you a sneak peek on what we have for draft percentages over on Fantasy Alarm, which you get part of the NBA Pro Package, 46% is what we're predicting him to be owned on FanDuel tonight, and 22%, just under 22% over on DraftKings. So a lot of people are leaning in that direction, and I think stars and scrubs will say is sort of the way to build tonight because of all that value.
Yeah, we're gonna see. I suspect we see stars and scrubs take down the slate tonight, and that who knows what Nets value comes to work out for us. But I do suspect stars and scrubs wins because the stars are so elite tonight, and the scrubs are really scrubby. But it's really good price points across the industry. So jam Trae in there. Don't be scared of the ownership on a 5-game slate.
Right. One of the first guys that you and I, really liked last night was John Moran in this matchup against Brooklyn. Does the fact that there is no Durant and Irving make him more or less appealing to you?
I think it's indifferent because we know Kyrie's a bad defender to begin with, so that kind of sucks. I don't think there's anyone that can really stay with him to begin with. I also don't think this is going to be a blowout. We saw Brooklyn compete with Caris LeVert at the helm in the bubble. So I think my like for Ja Morant stays the same. I'm actually going to be a little weird at point guard and move down to your next guy that you have listed in the playbook. Shout out to John for doing the playbook today. And that's Jamal Murray in tournaments. And I don't think a lot of people are going to go there. With a lot of people going to Morant, we have Shai Gilgeous-Alexander as a point guard on DK. Right. I think a lot of people go there. Trae Young, we obviously have already talked about his draft percentage, and we didn't even mention Damian Lillard against the Lakers. So I'm getting a little different at point guard today with Jamal Murray. This is a smash spot against a bad Rockets defense. We saw that in their first game that they are just going to try to outscore teams, and Jamal Murray got hot in that second half, and I think he rides it through this game. And if we get bubble Jamal Murray, I mean, he is a slate breaker.
He definitely is, and we just saw, against the Rockets, both Lillard and McCollum have monster nights. Right. McCollum went for 44. Lillard went for 32. Yeah, it was an overtime game, but I mean, they were both white hot the entire night because there really is no defense. It's James Harden and then a bunch of rookies and Christian Wood, out there basically running around for 35 minutes. So I'm with you. I think in GPPs, he's definitely a good pivot. He has as much upside. We saw him go for 60 in the bubbles. Definitely a potential there. Let's just take a look at value for a second. Really cheap guy here is Killian Hayes. There is no Derrick Rose. We've already talked about Detroit value. We didn't mention Hayes. Hayes hasn't been good as a rookie. He really hasn't been given a ton of run either. But there's not really much depth now behind him there. Going up against Atlanta, we know Trae Young, not a strong defender. Where do you sit with Killian Hayes tonight?
I mean, it's something that you and I discussed on the podcast last night because we saw his price tag and we saw that Derrick Rose was out. I mean, DeLon Wright has spent a lot of his career playing point guard. So if Killian Hayes doesn't start strong and continues to turn the ball over, why would they not just play DeLon Wright? They play Svi Mykhailiuk a couple extra minutes. They play Josh Jackson extra minutes. So I'm not as sold as the rest of the industry on Killian Hayes, and if that's my downfall tonight, so be it. I am not playing. I have 0 shares of Killian Hayes tonight. I think there's good enough value elsewhere to avoid him.
Very bold, very bold. And I agree with you. I don't think I'm going to go down there either. Maybe the most appealing spot would have been on DraftKings, but I think Prince at 31 just sort of solves that problem for you. And FanDuel, I'm spending up. I don't think I'm going to go down, but it probably is a contrarian way to get there. And if you're looking maybe to do a Harden AD stack, you're using Hayes at point guard to get you there. So certainly possible. Over at shooting guard, I mean, there is James Harden again. He's playing forever minutes. He put up 44 points and 17 assists against the other night against Portland. His usage rate was like 36%. He's just 1.8 fantasy points. Like, you name it, he's giving you Harden numbers. And he was almost 80% owned on Saturday. Here we have them. Definitely a tougher matchup going up against Denver, but it's only a 6-point spread here because the Harden factor. I think they know that he can just literally will them to being a competitive team. Do you fade the Harden ownership, which is, it almost has to be there tonight, given all the value that's on the slate.
What did I say to you the other night, John? When James Harden does not have anyone playing alongside of him, you play him. And it doesn't matter the matchup, doesn't matter the ownership, because he is going to give you 70, and then you figure out the rest of your lineup from there. And if you are a MME player, are you making multiple lineups? Sure, fade James Harden. But if you're a single entry guy or you're playing cash games, you plug James Harden in your lineup, and then you move on from there.
Yeah, I agree with you. You just it's like it's negligence almost not to lineup, like
I will really call the police on you if you do not play James Harden in your cash games or your single entries.
Right. It seems like a bad play. Other shooting guards on this slate, we do have Dennis Schroeder. If you're looking for sort of a mid-tier point, again, we don't know the LeBron James information yet. He's questionable. We have theorized that he would sit out on the second night of the back-to-back after AD sat last night, played today. And if you look at the usage rates this year, again, small sample size, it's only been a handful of games, but Dennis Schroeder sitting there with an over 30% usage rate when LeBron James is off the floor, and they're not moving his price tag. They've yet to move his price tag pretty much all season. He's been around 6K. He's been very productive. Last night in the blowout, he gave you probably his lowest fantasy output, but 39 fantasy points in 27 minutes on opening night, 25 fantasy points against Dallas in 25 minutes. He's locked in for 25 to 30 minutes, and LeBron plays point guard sometimes. If LeBron is not there, more minutes could go Schroeder's way, sort of running the point. I just feel like he has to be part of your core build today. Plus, you get that late night hammer exposure, which we of course love.
Yeah, and Damian Lillard defense is always something we love to attack. So, give me Schroeder. I think he's a great GPP play. Wouldn't go there in cash, but if LeBron is ruled out, then I think you can pivot to him in cash games. I think that would be a pretty safe play.
Yeah, I agree with you. One other guy I think sort of in the mid-tier that we should certainly take a look at is SGA. I know it's Utah. They're, a tougher team than we saw him go up against with Charlotte. But again, we're in a scenario where, there is nobody else really with the Thunder that is going to be able to, score the basketball, handle the offense. And we came into this year figuring that SGA was going to, really fill up the stat sheet for us. And that's what we got on night one, just shy of a triple-double, a couple assists here, a rebound or so there. And he really did the damage for us. Does this matchup at all worry you with it being Utah, or are you still sort of just all in here with SGA?
I don't know if we need to go there here in this spot, but I mean, he certainly looked pretty good in that opening game.
He had a 35% usage rate.
Right. And that's going to continue. And that's not going anywhere no matter the matchup. They need him to shoot. And, we suspect him to be better than a 40% shooter. They're sitting at 44, 45, 46% range. So a couple more shots fall, and we're talking about someone who goes over 50 fantasy points at 8K. That's more than enough. So, yeah, I think he's more of a tournament play here, considering how stacked point guard is, at least on DraftKings. And then FanDuel, cat's out of the bag. It's Harden and Dylan Brooks at shooting guard, and then
I was gonna bring up Dylan Brooks here now. If you listen to our podcast, of course, you heard our instant reaction to realizing that
your reaction was amazing.
I couldn't believe it. I had to almost reboot my computer to make sure that the page was lying to me there. Dylan Brooks is $3,700. Now, this could just be FanDuel setting us up for the ultimate trap play, or they're just willing you to play James Harden and they needed to give you a shooting guard to pair him up with. He's $3,700, Dylan Brooks. He's $5,500 over on DraftKings, which is much more reasonable. If he was $5K on FanDuel, I'd be like, yeah, that makes sense. The first two games of the season here on FanDuel, 33 and 28 fantasy points. I mean, he's almost 10xing you, 8xing you in return just based off what his tag is, based off what he has produced this season. Now you're talking about a great matchup against Brooklyn. I don't understand why he's so cheap. I honestly feel like it might have just been a misclick, a fat finger error, like I tweeted out today. That there's no reason for Dylan Brooks to be $3,700.
I don't have anything to add, because there's no reason for Dylan Brooks to be $3,700. I don't know how else to say it.
Just no reason. No reason for it. Small forward here, I think, again, the obvious play is Caris LeVert. You just have to use him. Mm-hmm. I had the numbers there in the fast break article, the core play article that we put out on Fantasy Alarm last year. Once Kyrie Irving went down in February, from basically February all the way through the bubble, LeVert averaged 24.3 points, 4.9 rebounds, 5.7 assists, and 1.6 steals per game. I mean, those are elite numbers. He fills it up. He gives you steals, and now he is the show tonight for the Nets in a fantastic spot. You almost have to lock him in like the other guys we talked about. If LeBron James plays, if we find that information out, how do you feel about him tonight, second night of a back-to-back, going up against Portland?
I think the one thing LeBron has working for him playing here is that he only played 26 minutes last night, and they blew Minnesota out. But I don't think we need to go there. I mean, we have, would you play him over Trae Young?
No.
Would you play him over James Harden?
No, of course not.
Would you play him over... I guess, would you play him over Nikola Jokic?
Maybe Jokic. Maybe I would consider Anthony Davis, but it'd be close. And again, this is sort of proving the point. I don't think you need to play LeBron. I don't think you have to do it, whether he's in or not. There's other spend-ups that I would prefer over him. It's just that he's LeBron James. He's polarizing. He can give you a triple-double. This is sort of a Western Conference matchup where you think, maybe LeBron would want to show up and put out against, Dame and McCollum here and just sort of set the tone we're the champs, we're still here. That could be said, but it's also the fourth game of the season. So, maybe he doesn't care yet. So, I'm with you. I'm full fade on LBJ. If you want to be contrarian today, that's probably your move. And just make sure you save salary somewhere. Maybe you lock in a power forward and, a Kuzma and LBJ, and then flip to Davis and a small forward, Derek Jones or something like that, in case he gets ruled out, and save yourself some salary there.
Yeah, I agree, because I prefer Davis. I prefer all those other guys in LeBron. I would get my exposure if I were to play LeBron on DK because of the triple-double upset.
Yeah, I'll give you that one. So we talked about LeVert already. Where are you going, James? What's some of your other sort of mid-tier plays that you're taking a look at here at small forward?
Probably Jerry Grant would probably be the guy, over 50 fantasy points. We know there's a lot of usage to go around with Blake and Derrick Rose off the floor. And it's not a value, Jerry Grant, but it feels like he's priced properly at $5,900. And if he's going to be a double-double threat, and we know he blocks a lot of shots, we know he's a very athletic guy. He's firmly in play against a bad Atlanta defense. So I think Jeremy Grant in a pace-up spot is very appealing to me here in this mid-tier.
Yeah, hard to ignore again. A guy that's expected to see just all of the minutes possible basically tonight.
Yep.
There are of course some other plays that may jump in there, but with the fact that there is no Blake, they could very well shift him up to power forward
Yep.
as well. And when they slide in a guy like Josh Jackson, who's a really good value tonight as well, in at the small forward spot, they could bump up Grant to power forward and play him there. The thing with Jackson to me, which is curious, was that he obviously had that huge opening night where he was mid-price and he played a bunch of minutes, but then he went into 2 overtimes the other night and he only played 18 minutes. We saw, Svi Mihailuk play a bunch of minutes there. What is your take on Jackson? How much do you trust him tonight? Again, someone that we see decent ownership on tonight because of the value.
I like Josh Jackson. I think this is his best opportunity he's had as a pro in Detroit. But it is weird because Svi was seen in overtime over Jackson. And Jackson had been playing pretty well. I mean, he had 8 rebounds off the bench the second time in a row. He's had 6+. So I think it's a little discouraging that we saw that. But, I mean, they don't have a lot of. I mean, I guess where they're not lacking is that like shooting guard, small forward position, right? They have a lot of depth there. But if we see DeLon Wright play a lot of point guard, I think that frees up minutes for Jackson. If I were to like soft project minutes for Josh Jackson today, it would probably be around like 25, 26. But at 25, 26 minutes, I think
he's basically a fantasy point per minute player. So
right. And if he gets you 25 at 4.2K, I mean, you're in a really good spot. It's 5X, 6X. So it's a good spot for Josh Jackson. I think there should be more minutes kind of similar to opening night than it was the other night.
All right. And then the obvious value we've already mentioned here tonight is Taurean Prince. He's $3,100 on DraftKings, $3,900 over on FanDuel. Oh, sorry, all the way around. No, that's right. 3,100 DraftKings, $3,900 on FanDuel. I think on DraftKings, he's small forward, power forward eligible, so you can get a little creative. He's small forward only. FanDuel gave you all 3 nets value at small forward tonight. So tip of the cap, FanDuel, you're doing a bang-up job with that one. But listen, Prince as a starter last year, again, he did start before getting injured, before not going into the bubble. 12.6 rebounds, 2.3 3-pointers per game, almost a steal per game. And then you look back at his numbers with Atlanta when he started, around the same thing, 13, 14 points, rebounds, steals, some threes. So especially on DraftKings where you're getting that 3-point bonus out of him, knowing that he could play 28, 30 minutes tonight, something in that range, I like him a lot. Again, I think you have to play him over on DraftKings because you need that value. There's 10x upside. It could be him. Got to lock him in. Not someone I would fade. I mean, what do you think, James? Cash games, 80, 90% ownership, something like that?
Yeah, something along those lines.
3,100 on DraftKings?
Something along those lines. Yeah, I mean, we've seen a sample size of him being successful in the NBA. So,
yeah.
Yeah,
he's not an unknown. He's not, Raul Nato, who were like, well, he's only ever played off the bench. No, this is a legit starter in the NBA who's only not starting now because they have Kevin Durant.
No one is Raul Nato, by the way, except Raul Nato, who's clearly like a top 5 player in the NBA when given a chance. But I digress.
Right, he's the new Rashawn Holmes. All right, let's jump on over power forward here. We are quickly running out of time. Slate lock at 7:30 tonight, though. Everybody, that's key to remember, right? Usually it's 7. Usually it's 7 o'clock. So we're giving the extra 30 minutes for news to roll in. So don't panic. We're obviously going to be in there and chat with everybody till roster lock to help answer all of your questions and update the news as it breaks. Power forward again. Anthony Davis is there. He's definitely ruled in. We know that. Portland, they're. I can't tell how good they are because they let James Harden almost beat them, right? They have the 2 horses there with Lillard and McCollum, and Nurkic's good. They added Covington. They added Derek Jones on the wings to play better defense. But, I still don't think they really have anybody to stop Anthony Davis. So, assuming Davis is a full go here, it's hard to, again, not, rule him out. There's just too much goodness on this slate with all that value.
I love seeing Anthony Davis at low ownership, which I feel like generally on slates with studs he is. So Seeing him at 7% is really tickling my fancy here, John. I'm gonna be playing some Anthony Davis tonight in tournaments, and just kind of. I mean, there's 60-point upside with Anthony Davis in this spot, like you mentioned. So high total, high pace game, possibly without LeBron. And if slate locks, like who else can you? You're not jamming anyone else in there at 10K,
Right.
I'm going to get Anthony Davis at 5 to 10% most likely. So yeah, tournaments, I love the guy. Plus, power forward isn't the best. Like when you run down like the rest of the position, I mean,
It's like the point guard at point guard position tonight on FanDuel. It's like very top heavy, and then it gets okay.
yeah, like I think when you're talking about like your mid tier, like in your playbook, I actually think Christian Wood, who's center on DK, power forward on FanDuel, is the obvious chalk here, and that's not really a secret to anybody. But like Darius Bazley, I think is an interesting tournament play. But like, does Darius Bazley really get you going? Then you go to like Kuzma, who could again, he was really good
Kuzma
last
on
night.
Kuzma on FanDuel, I think you have to play if
4,200,
LeBron sold
right.
out. He was 50% owned last night at $4,200. Obviously, they didn't react because they didn't know, so he's 4,200 again. I think you can get away with not playing him at $6,100 on DraftKings, but I mean, you saw how he came out last night. Like he didn't miss a shot. Now better team they're playing against. It's not the Timberwolves, but they said he took a step this year. They expected him to take a step this year, and he came out as their leading scorer for the first half until they sat him. So,
and they paid him. They paid him a whole bunch of money too. So,
Danilo Gallinari officially ruled out here. James, is that not to cut you off? Does it impact any decisions there with the Hawks for you?
I mean, DeAndre Hunter's playing really good minutes. He played 35 last time out. I know Capella's back, but I think Hunter can see his extra run here because he can play the 4. We saw him play the 4 sometimes last year. Probably give some more minutes to Bogdan off the bench too. So, but I think it mostly impacts Hunter for me. I would give him a slight bump if he wants. If you want,
I would give Collins maybe a slight bump too. Collins' minutes had actually been down this year. If you were looking at it, I think maybe Gallo being out now will sort of help that situation there possibly. And I think Kevin Huerter could be someone that maybe benefits slightly. Just again going rotation if they go small. He could be a guy that sees a bump. So I think those would be my two guys there.
I like Huerter, and he's played really well. He shot the ball really well to start the season. So better play in DK for the 3-point bonus.
Right. I agree with you on that one. But back to the mid tier. I mean, largely, I think you're right there. It's unexciting. I'm not as down on Bazley as you are. I mean, he's going to play a bunch of minutes. Bojan is the power forward for Utah, so it's not like there's much defense being played on him. And if he's going to play 33 minutes, he might just be on the floor enough to get you a double-double. Like low end, he's mid 5K. Again, you're right. It's probably not a spot you need to go to. On FanDuel, I'd rather play Robert Covington because he's somebody that's given us 20 fantasy points just in defensive stats before over on FanDuel. And he's cheaper and in the late night hammer game. So I definitely think he's fine. And for cash games, Bojan is someone I would take a look at. On DraftKings, under 5K, you get the 3-point bonus there, which is sort of his specialty. So power forward's interesting. It's not exciting at the bottom, but not every position can be a home run on a small slate.
Fair. I say we finish it up at center, where your favorite player, Nikola Jokic, has been pretty incredible the first 2 games of the year.
So here's the thing, right? Like game 1 for sure, smash spot, triple double, paid off the price tag, huge production. Game 2, the numbers were fine in terms of like he almost triple doubled for you, but if you are paying 10K for him on FanDuel, 47.8 fantasy points isn't really doing it for you. He played 38 minutes in that game, and he only got you 47 fantasy points at 10K. And this was like my biggest problem last year was that we would pay 10K for him and you'd give us 45 fantasy points. And we don't need that in GPPs. Cash games, sure, maybe, but I need him giving me 60, 70, fantasy points if I'm paying 10K to win a GPP with him as my top guy, because that's what the other guys are doing. Trae Young is giving me almost 60 fantasy points. James Harden is giving me almost 70 to 80 fantasy points. Like those guys, when you're paying 10K for them, are giving you the 6x, 7x return. Nikola Jokic did it in 41 minutes in an overtime game against Sacramento, but in 38 minutes against the Clippers, 24, 9, and 10, 1 steal. He's not paying it off for you. So, yeah, I think he's going to be contrarian tonight at the center spot. I think if you want to fade some of the other guys, go for it. It is Houston. Christian Wood is the only defender they have at the center spot. They go small after that. Like, it's a great spot for him, but he's still sort of in a prove it to me situation.
Fair. I don't know how contrarian he'll be. I guess he'll be more contrarian on DraftKings where Christian Wood's a center. I think on FanDuel, he'll be highly owned because you don't have Christian Wood. We don't know if LeBron's playing, so Harrell's ownership will kind of be low.
I think Plumlee is where everybody goes on FanDuel.
I think Plumlee is pretty much where everyone goes outside of like when you drop down to the mid-tier. And I think that's fine because there's no Okafor. They've announced Isaiah Stewart and maybe Sekou Doumbouya are going to be the backup centers, but both are maybe. So, like, is Plumlee going to see even more minutes, 33, 34? I think he's a really safe play. I'm with you on Plum Dog. I mean, we talked him up. We're literally changing our podcast name to the Plumlee.
Always pay their debts,
The Plumlees only, always pay their debts. So, I'm definitely in. I think he's more cash game viable for me, but I could see why you want to play him in both formats.
I mean, yeah, if you're just going to take a look at what his production has been this year, and it may not have, it's not jumping off the page, but he's giving you some scoring, he's giving you some rebounds. So what's doing it for me? 5.5 assists, 1.5 steals per game, and now there's no Blake Griffin. He could play 35 minutes tonight against a team that Capella is only going to play 20 to 25 max, and then where are we going? Is it John Collins? That he's up against? Or am I in the right game? Am I in the wrong game? No, I'm in the right game.
You were in the wrong game.
Wrong game. Okay. See, I had myself confused there.
No, you are in the right game.
Okay.
He's going up against John Collins. Yes,
for whatever reason, right game. I had a screen pop up on me and I lost track of what I was looking at. And I was like, whoa. I was looking at Jared Allen, but because Plumlee is there right at the same price point. And I'm like, wait a minute, what am I looking at here? Right. So if Capella is only there for 20 or so minutes, is John Collins then sliding over to center? And Plumlee, I think, can eat up on John Collins. Not a good defender, foul happy. So I think a lot of people should be going to Plumlee. And then because I mentioned Jared Allen, I loved him last night, wrote him up in the playbook, coming off the bench, had a huge game there. Now no Durant, no Irving. He's a usage monster. I think he can get it done against Memphis. And if he's not starting, if DeAndre Jordan's the one that has to contend against Jonas Valanciunas, and then Jared Allen's in against, Brandon Clark or Gorgie Niang, that's advantage Allen for me. So I'm big on those two guys in the mid-tier.
Yeah, and something of note is Valanciunas is generally someone that teams like to get going early, and he could put DeAndre Jordan in early foul trouble, and we could see Jared Allen a lot in this game. Mm-hmm. So I do like both those guys. I want to throw a name at you, and he's not in the playbook because I see Enes Kanter down there. But did you see the game that Marc Gasol had last night? He went 12, 7, 8, and 4 in 21 minutes. If there's no LeBron, any merit to playing Marc Gasol at 4,100?
I would not go there. I think that was just purely the fact that he was up against Naz Reid and whoever else, Ed Davis. I think that was the advantage for him there. Yep. Not necessarily the matchup I'd be looking for with him there, but I mean, I don't know if he's on the floor against Enes Kanter. I guess that's basically going up against a paper bag. So it's possible, but he's going to start and go up against Nurkic there. So probably not on the Gasol train.
Okay, and that paper bag got a damn good looking mustache. Let me tell you.
Great mustache and great fantasy points per minute. He's doing it again. No one's going to play him tonight, but if you are making 150 lineups, maybe you throw Kanter in 2.
I would do the same.
But that does wrap it up. We're a little bit over. Of course, roster doesn't lock till 7:30 tonight. So if any late-breaking news, we're going to have it for you. All of the content is now out. The playbook, the DFS Fast Break Core Plays article, the NBA Starting 5 from Justin Fensterman, the Value Vault from Sean Mitchell. You can still have time to listen to the podcast. that James and I did last night. It's only 45 minutes long, so get it in before roster lock. And again, we'll be in Twitter and we'll be on chat. So if you have any questions, hit us up. But for now, we'll catch you guys next time.